Okay. Testing, testing. See if we're live. Yeah. Looks like it. Good day, everybody. Let's check Chess Dojo on YouTube. Looks like it. Live as well. Yeah. Let me know if there's any problems with the video or audio. This looks like... Wow, Sindarov's still playing very quickly. Right? Lots of extra time on his clock again. At first blush, it looks like a drawable rook ending, but I'm just opening my thing here. So if he draws, it will clinch the event. Exactly right, PB Corporeal. He's 2 points ahead. And there's 2 games left, so if he keeps his 2-point lead over Giri here, then he'll be 2 points ahead with 1 game left. So that'll be that. Hi, Minerva. And was Jesse on earlier today? I see somebody change the title here to Giri-Sindarov Candidates plus Dojo Work. So maybe Jesse was already on today. That's cool. Okay, so let's open up a couple windows potentially. But first, since this one could determine the whole thing, we'll get a read on this, and then I'll do the tour. All rook endgames are draws. Famous saying. Taking a look at this, the rook and king activity is fair for black. The king is slightly better than white, but I don't know if it's enough to matter. The pawn structure is slightly worse, but at most white has 1 advantage in the position and a fairly light one. So I would guess that like 100% this is within the realm of a draw, within the drawing margin. I'd be quite surprised if it's not a draw right now. Let me quickly see what the opening was. Jesse was pretty convinced 2 hours ago that it would be a draw. C5 here from Sindarov, right on. Takes on that isolated queen pawn. Giri got a pleasant position endgame against the isolated queen pawn against Esipenko a few days ago and couldn't quite push Esipenko over the brink. It was like, mildly close, but couldn't quite do it. So Sindarov, well, I mean, he's well within opening theory at this point. There's a good chance he'll get to play d4 and dissolve the isolated pawn immediately out of theory. But even if he doesn't, he might be thinking like, well, even worst case scenario, Anish can't quite win this endgame against me. Maybe the hope. Okay, so h3, so he gives a tempo to get d4. And Anish tries to keep it interesting. So he plays a, must-win situation kind of move here. The minimalist move for Giri would be something of this sort, right? And just say, some small hopes for the bishop pair in a long game. But concretely, black's, quickly going queen b6, pressuring f2 and b2, and pieces developing cleanly and simply. So I guess he decides... Let's try and make it a little more tense here. Makes a kingside pawn majority. Now he wants to play with like f4 and stuff, but knight comes to e5 quickly. And he takes knight versus bishop as his... Yeah, he can't figure out how to keep the bishop pair, right? Because when the knight comes to e5, if he retreats, d3 is good. So instead of keeping the bishop pair, he gives both bishops to get this imbalance of knight versus bishop. And now you could imagine a scenario e5, knight on e4, where the knight could try to outperform the bishop. You can also imagine scenarios where you go e5, f5, and try and get at the king with knight h5. So black needs to make use of this passed pawn, and normally the way to do that would be to play rook c8, rook c3, something like that, to play on the c file. Also, rook c8, queen c7, queen c2, that kind of stuff. There comes that e5 move. Oh, Sindarov's just making a beeline for the blockading piece. Interesting. So white could play rook d1 here, but without queens, it devalues the kingside majority. That makes a lot of sense. Everybody understand that idea from Sindarov? The biggest danger for black here is the pawn majority on the king side. Your king could get squished, right? And no version of a defensive bishop on f8 is going to outperform a knight in the center with these 3 light squares to hop on. So you're going to get slowly like endangered by these pawns approaching your king and the rooks massing behind them. So there's 2 things you could do that would counter white's plan. One is you get your own passed pawn moving. So you break the blockade. The other would be you trade queens so that this thing coming in on the king side just doesn't matter that much. In an endgame, you might still activate your majority for white against the king side, but it's more like, maybe you make a passed pawn and then the king's well placed to blockade it. So this is just really good, clear insight into how to play this position. So he just goes beeline for that, and basically you either trade queens or you let the pawn start going. Either way, black is safe. Okay, so Anish comes in with the knight. Gets his pawn majority broken. He's got the threat of knight takes b6, rook takes d4 at some point, although e5's hanging, so I think if Sindarov plays rook c8, he's maybe planning to play b3 and sort of sit on that trade possibility. We get a Chekovich. Goes after the e-pawn with everything he's got. And goes straight into the rook endgame. And then this is their endgame, yeah. White brought the king there on purpose to defend this pawn. He's advancing these. If he just plays rook h2, what can white do anymore? White's going to play g5, presumably, but then at some point, white's going to have to go with the rook after something because the king is trapped. To me, this looks like a very, very safe shape for black to just put the rook on h2, keep the king in, and take on h4 whenever white's rook goes active, and then just have some kind of massacre of pawns to follow. Yeah, it looks like a very clean, looks like a very clean draw to me at the moment. So let's pull up some other games to see what else we got going on. Oh my goodness. That's a spicy position. Fabi in Prague, still playing chess. Good to see. There have been a spate of draws the last couple rounds of this tournament, but not because nobody's trying. There have been some real tries. And a lot of, forced wins that they couldn't quite find or push the opponent over the edge. So let's have a quick look at these. Wow, this game is still in its infancy. Wei Yi and Esipenko headed for time trouble. F3, king weird. Rook here already fights in the center with the king on g1. This does not look good for Wei Yi. He's not even threatening fe, fe. In fact, last move he didn't play fe. Look, f3, rook c8, and he doesn't take it. Because if he takes, now his pieces are hanging, right? So it's just not good. Blue Bomb's tournament's going fine, Sweet Blues, right? About as well as can be expected for your first super tournament of your life. Now, we'll discuss this more in a podcast tomorrow after the final pawn has been captured, right? But so far, I'm very happy with, I'm very satisfied with Blue Bomb's performance. Of course, I wanted him to qualify for the candidates, so, but that wasn't, a very realistic hope, right? I think he had, whatever I said, a 5% chance or something like that, so it was, not a big chance it was going to happen, and it didn't. But yeah, I would have liked to see that. But barring that, I want him to have a fine tournament, and he's had a fine tournament. Here, he's got an equalish position against Naka. At first, I thought maybe this knight could outplay the bishop in this locked position, but now I see that black basically has some clear dynamism on the g file. You double rooks, and then at some point you play h4. and you can make stuff happen. So white has to always watch out for that. You can put your pawn on f6 to keep the knight from bothering you in the future. And knight here, knight here. It's a nice square for the knight, but the bishop just chills where it is, and the rooks can't do anything. So this is probably a very drawish position, actually, whereas this one here could be the first win of the tournament for Esipenko, who would be mildly unfortunate for me since I predicted he'd be in last place. I need him to stay in last place. But yeah. Let me see that position, yellow. I see what you mean. You're saying after f6, white had gone f5 there. Rook c6. You don't think that he might have played rook takes e5 there? Maybe, right? Okay, but let's just see your thing. Rook here, hitting this. Knight takes, pawn takes, and then you get to play e6, right? That looks quite dangerous for black. But I guess you would go for the second rank. White would go for I'm threatening you. Yeah, this is probably a good position to spar. My guess is this pawn on e6 is actually too strong. Actually, instead of putting a rook behind it, white can play rook f2, trade one rook, put the other rook on d1, attacking that pawn. I think white's winning after e6, or very, very close to winning. But this is also a very good question, isn't it? Two connected passers with the bishop. I guess if white can get control of e4 right away, then maybe white's better. Get the open file. G4. Yeah. Interesting, interesting. Good morning, T. Fleming. All right. In any case, we're here after king a3. Sindarov hasn't moved for like 5 minutes or so. I think this one's really drawn, but I think these are fascinating. Not the draw. This one, as expected. 6 out of 13 for these guys. Esipenko, h4, and he's thinking. Wei Yi has won one game, I think, and it was no 2 games, but one game against Esipenko the other time around, which was like crushing, right? Or did he not win the game afterwards against Bluebaum where he was so close? He didn't. It was like brilliant. But yeah, his one win was against Esipenko. And it was with queen to e8 in the Petrov. Just absolutely easy, crushing game for Wei Yi. This might be Esipenko's revenge. Might be his one win. H4. I mean, is white hoping to stash the king there, I guess? Black's queen's a little bit trapped. Black wants to build up pressure on these squares. But, you know, if you ever trade here to try and win something here, then bishop here hits your queen and you don't know where to go. Yeah, so this is like a key move for Esipenko. Like, Wei Yi's in a tangle, but it's hard for black to find a crushing move. You know what? If white hadn't played h4, if white had played some other, you know, random move, I think knight c5 might have been the move to build for black here, right? Like, let's say you play a4, or I don't know if rook c1's okay or something, but, you know, something like this. Like, imagine this would be the building move for black. Going after the bishop in order to go after c4 with, you know, this point here. So h4 gets the king a flight square. I assume this doesn't work now. Let's just double check, though. King here. Queen h4 is a little bit hard to stop. But okay, white's up a piece. Knight f2 is not elegant, but it is an extra piece. So there's no way that's coming anymore. This is the other game that's super exciting. Caruana versus Prague. Whoa. He just traded in the queen. They're playing very quickly suddenly. Hang on. Let's see. h4, taketh, taketh, taketh. You would love to take on g5 here, but knight d6, knight b7. Goes after the knight, maybe threatening bishop a6. No, there'd always be knight d6. Goes with the g-pawn. Here comes the g-pawn. Wow, he doesn't even have time for rook f7 because of bishop here. Right, like rook f7, bishop c4 defending this, here, here. Nah, I guess it's playable. They probably got something actually pretty similar to that. Let's see. So g7 gets played. Rook moves. Checks him. And then rook h5. Very similar, but... yeah, very, very similar. Tries to hold the g-pawn. Okay. So... threats like rook f1 to go to f7 are covered by bishop here. Rook e1 won't do anything because the bishop's here. So his plan is this. So Prague has three moves to attack the g7 pawn. 1, 2, 3. Actually, in a certain sense, if you attack the g pawn in 2 moves, you win. If you attack it in 3 moves, white gets time to play h6, and white maybe wins. So that is interesting. Let's see. How would we attack that pawn as black? Knight f6 to e8 comes to mind. Prague has just played knight f6 after a 2-minute think here. Wonder if my Sindarov board is not updating. Has he really been thinking for like 10 minutes? Okay. So what does Fabi have? d5. Wow. So he's saying if you take with the bishop, I get rook f1, threaten the knight, and if the knight moves, come into f7. Now Sindarov's thinking, PB, yeah. I don't know, relishing the moment or what it is, but knight d5 goes in the wrong direction. Pawn takes d5 allows rook e1, knight e4. The simplest move to me looks to be e5, maybe. Then white goes queen f5, trying to get into e6. And against bishop d5, rook back to f1. Oh, so it's a funny little thing to look at. I assume Prague is winning, by the way, folks. That's my assumption. That's my guess. And it's going to be Prague's guess as well. Perhaps, so he'll be looking for winning opportunities. And he won't be pumped about variations that don't look winning. e5, queen f5, bishop d5, rook f1. Ouch. After e5, maybe run the h-pawn because there's no longer knight e8. That's true, Aritra. I was also just thinking e5, like a very direct line. Threatening queen e6, which wins, like, breaks up all these pieces. Here. Nobody can defend the knight. Oh, but now the bishop covers f7. Maybe you can do this. Queen f8. Rook f7, breaking the connection. That wins for white as well, right? But yeah, you've got a good point. Maybe just h4. Knight e8 was the plan. Now there's queen e6 winning the rooks. So now, like, what does black do? Sort of nothing. So you can maybe just cruise along here. Cool. A very tricky move. Well, at 15 minutes, he's not yet completely out of time. Maybe you can figure it out. He could also leave the pawn there, but he can't play knight e8 with the pawn there. He could take rook check, knight e4. He's done something. He took with the knight. Okay, that's maybe the safest move with the idea of coming back. But that's the tempo white needs, right? h4, knight here, h5, and if knight e8, h6 is in time. So Fabi's got the tempo he needs to defend that pawn as far as I can see. Ay, ay, ay. So is white better instead of my first assumption of black being winning? If white gets the pawn to h6, then basically it feels like white would be better, you know. Unless there's something weird. You'd want to make some use of this piece at some point in the game, right? So let's just think. Like here, here, here. What if we do this guy? Here. I don't know what we're doing. Maybe this bishop should come to e4 now. Oh, but that always allows rook f1. Careful, David. You could do this at this point, right? So this is one like baseline scenario. Black could sack the knight for those pawns. Fabi thinking, but now plays h4 after 2 minutes. So this is another baseline scenario that black could do at some point. And this position would be pretty hot. Not clear who would be better, but I think it should be within the drawing range for both sides. I don't know. When things are this imbalanced, it's often hard to stabilize, but this looks reasonable. Like black needs to blockade one passed pawn, right? Needs to control one square somewhere here. Has to cover the king against attacks. I don't know. I believe in black holding this position. I do. Maybe like, you know, bishop d5, rook c4, king here. Or bishop d5, maybe rook's double. I mean, you want to keep the c move from beating you at some point. There's this trick where white goes queen h4 check and wins the piece, but if you go bishop d5, there's also the trick that when you go rook g8, there's c4. That's why I was thinking like bishop d5, maybe rook c4. Make white defend this pawn, worry them about doubling this way. h4, knight comes back to f6. So on h5, maybe he's just going to take it. I mean, I haven't seen like a brilliant other move just yet, but we could try other moves and see if we find them. When h7 comes in, I mean, we're sacking in one moment here. And look at this. What happens here? Can white just take the rook and play this? And is there no way to stop white from queening? It seems weird because black does have 3 pieces in the area. Okay, they're playing some moves. h5 has been played quickly. I kind of think Prague's just going to take it. As far as I can tell, this queen's for white. Rook g7, queens. Knight g7, queens. King here. Queens. You know it would be insane if black had time to do like king here, rook here, e5, white queens, and here, and keep the queen trapped and draw the game like that. That would be insane. That would be hilarious. But even there, g4 would break it up. Knight h5 comes in as we've predicted. Sometimes the only moves are the only moves. So we get this endgame. I think this endgame is equal on this queen versus rook, bishop, and pawn situation. Actually, technically, it's queen versus rook and bishop because they each have the same number of pawns. It just feels like black's up a pawn. But yeah, it's probably equal / slightly better for white because there's more risk to the black king with the queen on this open board. But black's advantage, this pawn structure, it's nearly like being up a pawn, right? Plus these are split. So it's kind of like rook, bishop, and pawn against queen. Very, very close to equal. A little harder for black to play because there's always going to be tactical juice. Well, not always, but there will generally be a fair amount of tactical juice against the king in the middle of the board like this. Meanwhile, let's check over with Sindarov. Has he played any moves? King a3, 13 minutes on the famous h6. Wow. So going for a high degree of precision on his last moves of the tournament. He doesn't want to let white freeze things with g5 without making one more pawn trade. So he wants to go behind here and force one of these pawn trades. Okay, you're within your rights. This would also be an interesting move here, here, here. The idea being to try to win. But honestly, you could never win by taking on c4, and white has this move, and then you can't stop that. So pointless. So he goes h6, rook d4 check. I imagine he'll go here, because if he goes here, then this is hard to cover. So I think he wants these two squares now. He's going to want to cover the 5th rank and the 7th rank to slow white's rook from attacking these pawns. So go king e6. And then something like rook c4, he could go back to d6. And we might get something like b4, but then b6 is covered, and black's very quick with this. Oh, I could take by king. And then we'll get something similar like this. Black's fine. Not too much going on this board just yet. So let's go check this hectic board. He did play knight c5. Holy moly. And he doesn't play knight e4 here. So somehow I got that move wrong. This queen retreat as the follow-up threatens this. Attacking here. What the heck? It also threatens knight c5, double attacking these. Like if you just repeated positions to avoid that knight f2. Well, I guess he could also go knight f2 anyway and just do this double attack. Wow. And pawn takes is going to open up this rook again. So it'll be down one piece. So he takes this way, opening up the bishop, retreats that piece. What's he going to do? E3 now, kicking the knight, probably? Wow. Can you believe that knight c5 was the move? Takes here. What was wrong with my knight e4 suggestion? We offer a queen trade. And if queen takes, we recover, we retreat this way, takes this way. Bishop e5 or something. Bishop g3. Knight e4, queen h4 here. That's attacked. Queen here, here. Maybe he was just willing to play this position. I agreed that my knight f2 was kind of lame. And he's just saying you're discoordinated and your knight's not like that much better than 3 pawns anyway, right? Or you could go for rook d8, rook d2. But I like just strengthening my pawn, right? Maybe a5, b4 to come. Is that the plan? Wow. Wow. Epic. Epic. Gotta root for Andre here, even though, for my own prediction purposes, I need him to finish in last place, and him winning is very inconvenient for that. But, wow, if that was the concept, he's saying, like, even if you trade off this stuff, your knight has to do some kind of a passive retreat. Can't go here or here or here. Could do something like knight c3. Takes. Here. Check. You can't block with the queen because of the knight. And if you come here, you lift a rook. Oof. Wow. To just play this position and say, yeah, and you can go knight f2, and we just take a pawn back and just keep playing. Now that I think about it, black's definitely a little bit better in this position. It seems simple to say. There's just nothing about white's position that's good or coordinated or anything. No strong point, no advantage, no play. Well, that's a nice move from Andre. We got to give him that one. And then even against king h3, this follow-up is sweet. Queen d4 with threats. I mean, not obvious that, like, the follow-up to this check. Queen f2, it's not even obvious that that's a good move, right? And then the idea is just to retreat back. Dang. Powerful. And he's played e3. And now queen f6, taking his time with this pawn. He's definitely playing like a piece sack here. And he doesn't have immediate, like, mating threats on this king. With Wei Yi's solution, his rook's going to be able to get in the game, and, his king will be alive. It's really going to be the pawns. And it's only going to be 2 pawns, not 3. Huh? So Wei Yi has found, like, pretty tricky way to respond as white. I guess he can, in some cases, restart an attack with bishop takes f3, and the king will be pretty open. But he won't have much material left. Anish won a pawn already? Got that move wrong. Well. That didn't go well. Might still be a draw with the king trapped, but why, oh why? He only thought 1 minute about this. Why, oh why not go here? As suggested by Mr. Bruce. Anyone got any ideas for white against king e6 here? All right, we're getting lots of moves here, though, so we're going to have to stay live with the game. I don't know why the king doesn't hang out in this corner here. He comes up and gets sort of zugzwanged by his own a-pawn, steps aside here, defends it, back. Okay. Holding. So rook a7 is not doing anything to him. They repeat moves. Rook g7 is forced here. And then he can already say king c6 is a threefold repetition. So that's it. Sindarov is the candidate. We can call it. We can call it here. And there's the draw. Round 13. Sindarov leads Giri by 2. Let's just say Sindarov wins 2026 candidates. Bravo. A dominant performance. A little bit less exciting the last couple games. But the excitement level in the first half was really hard to live up to. Sindarov in the second half here has 1 win and 5 draws with 1 game to go, which is solid. The win was scintillating. He had 4 whites in the first half, 4 blacks in the second half. So he's moving on. His tournament performance rating is, down from 3,000 to 2,900. So it's not, quite like a Fisher sweep in the end. He's been brought back down to earth in the second half, or because of his tournament situation, he directed things in a calmer direction. But we'll have to see what he gives at his next tournaments, right? But I imagine, but I think a Sindarov versus Gukesh match for the World Championship, it's crazy. That'll be a 19-year-old against a 20-year-old or something like that. The youngest World Championship match in history, and in fact, if not for Gukesh already being world champion, whoever won that match would be the youngest world champion in history. So whoever wins it will be the second youngest world champion in history, guaranteed. I mean, it's such a young world championship match. It's just off the charts. I mean, it's going to be maybe 10 years younger than the previous youngest world championship match ever, which was Ding against Gukesh. So it's just ridiculous how young this is looking, and we'll have to see if the world championship match in 2 and 4 years, if that breaks that trend at all. But there are certainly more players between the ages of 18 and 24 who look like very likely candidates for 2 years from now than there are players over the age of 30. So it's more likely that the next challenger will be somewhere between 18 and 24 years old 2 years from now than that it'll be, still Fabi or Levon or somebody, right? So, okay. In 10 years, the world champ will be down to 9 years old. Maybe. Okay. So, that game's in the books. We got Fabi versus Prague going on. Rook d1 the move. Bishop d5. I predicted that piece would go there. Idea is to next put this here and cover all these pawns at once. Cover these 2 squares, have the bishop locked in there. I feel pretty safe for Prague. Looks like he thought for a bit on bishop d5. They've got 8 moves to make. Mild time pressure for Prague, nothing dramatic. Wei Yi, Esipenko, c5 played. Is he saying that if you take this, he can take it back and not lose that knight? That seems like too bold a claim. Why not rook g8? In the Giri-Sindarov game, Jason? Or in the Fabi Prague probably. Okay, yeah. Why not rook g8? Good. All right, so I'll say if rook g8, there's this check. And that's why, even after bishop d5, let's say white did something like rook d2 for argument's sake. If I played rook here, getting ready to do damage, right? White will play c4 and disrupt my business a little bit. I don't know how dramatic it is, but it's just going to mess with my business a tiny little bit. I can't take because of queen h4, so I'm probably playing something like bishop c6 or something, and then maybe check here, and now d6 is a soft spot. Rook g5 before taking. Oh, rook g5 here before taking this. Sure, there's a couple possibilities. Queen h4 maybe, defending it. And your rook can't move because it's pinned. Or white gives a check, you block, and then plays like something like this at some point. There's just a little bit of juice there around this move, which is why I've got this concept. It's slower than rook g8, but my concept is to put the bishop on d5, locking this stuff in, right? Then rook c4. And also I'm asking white, like, are you going to stop rook c3? Like, I'm not unwilling to just take this pawn off the board, right? So, I want to see, are you going to do something like this? I might even take on a2 and come back, depending on the tactics, right? But my idea, my large idea is to maybe come this way. Then at some point I could come to g4 with this rook, and it's kind of like the effect of rook g8, except I keep c4 covered the whole time. So I'm maintaining the blockade on the weak c pawn, on the isolated pawn, so it can't be used as sort of like a throwaway tactical juice. I think that's the concept Prague's using, but, they're levels above me, but it was what occurred to me in this position. Wei Yi versus Esipenko. This move is interesting from Wei, and he spent quite a bit of time on it. You'd think that black could take, and then knight takes would somehow be suicidal. But I guess he's saying that, like, he can just back it up, and you can't get at it on this dark square. It's hard to believe. But he plays bishop a6, rook c1, and now it's been captured. Now, if white can't capture it, then black's going to have 3 connected passed pawns against that knight. It could be scary. White's got an extra pawn here. Even that's only 2 pawns. If white can take back, then black only has 1 pawn against the knight. So it's very precarious material balance from black. Yeah, and I don't really see what black's going to do against knight c5 yet. Cheeky as the move is, bishop here, threaten the knight, and then if the knight moves, some kind of fancy bishop move-a-vitch. So I go here, just so I don't have to worry about bishop f1. Then check. Oops. Okay, hang on. Can't go there. Let's say this is the only square I can go to. d4, threatening check, which would win the queen. And then you move presumably you move the queen, or you could sack the queen. No, you can't sack the queen because of queen e6. Boom. This is why it was so important to lure the king up from h2 to h3 5 moves ago. So we go here, we're threatening check. King h2 would be one way to try and remedy that. Boom. Boom. Definitely enough to draw, but is it enough to win? Boop. That should be a draw, right? Yeah, Lars, it's hard to know if, like, Giri or Fabi had been closer on +4, +5 or something, if that would have pushed him, if he could have scored more, or if he would have got too nervous, or he would have lost more, or what, We'll have to see how Sindarov plays at his next tournament where something else is at stake, right? Right now, he's kind of closing out the tournament. Okay, we're going to get a move here. Queen D1, not daring to take the pawn just yet. Certainly threatening to capture it. And I would be unsurprised by the move bishop c4 to shelter the pawn like that. If here, it's hard to control such a dark square. Wait, he could play d4. Oh, because he's got the check to cover c5. So that's obviously the desirable move for Esipenko here, d4. If rook c5, you go trade, check, here. That's looks like death for white, those two connected passers. Or knight here, we have to verify, but this should do the same thing. Check, here, rook takes. But this time we've got time to take one of those pawns away. Now this rook's hanging, the pawn's hanging. We have to trade one here. And it's pretty easy for white to blockade a single dark square. And the king's well sheltered. So this should be a draw, this position. So d4, rook c5. No, d4, knight c5. Now I'm just casting about for other candidate moves that I've missed. I don't want to tunnel on one variation. But d4, knight c5. Okay, bishop c4 idea, but the rook can just take it now. D3. Knight takes, queen f5, king here. Even if we just allow black's main idea, this whole position is just fundamentally fine for white. With the bishop just covering things. So other candidate moves would be queen e7. Bishop c4. I'm going to lean towards bishop c4, I think. Yeah, bishop c4 looks fine. Maybe even a little bit nifty. Knight a5. We got to move. I'm not sure how to handle knight a5 there, but bishop c4 is the move from Esipenko. They've got 12 moves to make, so they're both in serious time trouble. For this complicated a position, these two are in serious time trouble. Knight a5 played quickly, so he did see that coming. Bishop d5, queen h4 check, king there, queen a4 check, king d8, and he finds a spot. See, it's hard to contain both of these pieces in this position. Rook c3 just takes the pawn. Lets Fabi in. King c7, allowing queen a7. Holy moly. And he's in a rush to take this g-pawn and counterattack white's king. I can tell you, Prague is tired of getting attacked one-way street here. He can also use this move rook c1 to start his attack in some cases, because king h2, there's mate, and king f2, sometimes he'll have rook c2. It depends where white's queen goes, right? But like, for example, if she goes into a7, right, then rook c1, c2 could be his next moves. Ay. This one's hot too. Fabi hasn't moved yet, 6 minutes each, but these guys are closer to time control. They've got 4 moves to make. These guys have a dozen moves to make, so it's going to be a mess. We get a check, king here, and the bishop retreats now. So is there anything stopping the knight from just bouncing back to b3? Easy as you like. Feels like Esipenko's just burned his check, so he must have a reason, because he's playing faster than Wei right here, so there must be something going on. c4, knight d4 does not look like it. Here, I don't see what that does. This just doesn't seem like it should work anymore, does it? Knight b3 played. Let's move 31. Quick bishop c4. So it could just be a repetition here around this knight a5 thing. But I don't know why he threw in the check. Like, if you were open to repetition right here, you know, maybe bishop a6, knight b3, bishop c4. I'm not sure why you would burn this useful check, sending the king to a better square. It just looks bad. So there would have to be some very specific reason for it. I'm curious what's happening in the women's tournament. I saw Bayeva won today. Wow. So she's coming back. She's won 3 of her last 4 games after being on a minus score. Lana won. She's back up to even. Vaishali drew after losing yesterday, so she is... But Bibisar has caught up with her. Zhu's on 7. Her king is open, and there's a passed A pawn. It's hard to defend both sides of the board. White's up a pawn, but it's super risky for her. She could lose here to Goryachkina even. The position's out of control. Like, you're barely holding f3. Your king's open. This thing's going. What were the last few moves? There was sort of a time control. Oof, another pawn move over here. Black's just moving back and forth quickly. The women's Candace tournament is super, super tight. Oh, yellow, you got it. Thank you. Okay, yellow points out that pawn would be hanging. So bishop c4, knight a5. If you repeat moves, white can take you out here. So it's just a pure defensive move. He has to hold that square, and then he's moving back and forth. And Wei avoids the repetition here with this move, rook e1. So white's playing for more now. But I would say the position is safely equal. I'm sorry, folks, that there are going to be so many draws actually today. In the end, the positions were very exciting, but the players are playing well enough to hold it together. Esipenko's brilliant knight c5 may have been just not quite good enough. Now, if he goes d4, why not? I guess knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. e2 looks fine. I don't know why he doesn't play d4. Knight a5 comes again. Oh, some more repeating of moves from Wei Yi. The whole battle around this area here, you know, is basically an opposite colored bishop. It's a classic battle of color complexes, right? Black wants the pawns on dark squares so that their bishop will be good, and black will have some control of the dark squares and be able to break blockades. White wants to force 1 or 2 black pawns to light squares so this bishop is terrible and white can get an amazing blockade that black won't be able to break. So that's why they're locked into moving back and forth. And every time the bishop's here, in general, black's threatening d4, kicking the knight away. And let me just show you for a moment. Like, if in theory black can play d4, kick the knight, and keep the pawns like this, then that's always very dangerous for white. Black at the right moment maybe gets this pawn all the way to the next dark square. So that's why every time this is here, white's sort of tagging that piece so that black can't play d4, and then when it moves, white's attacking c5. So it feels like close to balance, but, you know, Wei does have a small material lead, and he has avoided the repetition once. But I think we're just barely at a balance where these passed pawns are equal to the knight. Rook takes c4 and godly knight. Like this. Now you need your knight and bishop to defeat a rook plus pawns. The pawns aren't very good anymore, but the knight's not godly, right? If this knight were godly, like if it were on e4, definitely. I guess that means the big question is, can you go to e4? And I'm pretty certain the answer will be no. Like black will go here, right? And then whatever move you do with your queen, black could do something like this, or rook takes in this case. So you want to go knight c1 to e2 to c3 to e4. Yes, of course. You would like to. But I think there's just no way that could happen, right? Rook here, queen here, rook here, queen here. So black threatens rook takes knight. And there are just too many of these pawns too close to the edge of the board, the end of the board. Okay. I'm going to find my sweater. I finally cooled down from my swim. Oh, sore too. Huh. Legs leaden upon the stairs. Okay. Knight a5, bishop a6, queen a4. So with 45 seconds and 2 moves to go, Wei Yi keeps the game going. Desirable move is d4. What does he have in mind? The bishop's defended, so there's no there's not going to be some dramatic tactical boom. Maybe he's just going to come here with that knight. This is very, very aggressive of him, of Wei. Because, a knight's not normally so much better than passed pawns, but opposite-colored bishops increases the number of blockades possible, which decreases the value of pawns. Still, you see these pawns, you don't normally think you can win the game. And Wei thinks he can win the game. Engineer's game... We are here. If we're black's move, could they play bishop f3, knight f3, rook f3, queen f3, queen d2, right? The answer is that would lead to a clear draw sweet blues, right? Because white's in danger of losing to the a-pawn coming. Plus the queen is in their position threatening queen d4 and stuff like that. So white's going to go queen f5 in that position and give a perpetual. Immediately. So bishop takes f3 would lead to pure queen ending and then a repetition. White plays g5. So she's looking at some kind of an attack. But there's queen e1 to mess with you. Did you do it anyway? How dramatic is that? Let's have a little look. Rook f6. Checkaroo here, checkaroo here. Don't play, knight d7, knight takes rook. No, we gotta just come through and checkmate. Okay, that looks convincing. So g5. Black is not encouraged to take it. Black plays bishop c8, looking to cover this angle to the king. But this move from Ju makes a lot of sense, g5. I like it a lot. The point is, this pawn on g4, it's already not covering her king very well, right? Like, her king is open and exposed. Yeah? So she trades this pawn for one of these pawns with g5, let's say bishop c8, g takes h. Then she's opening the black king similarly, right? So, like, let's say bishop c8 takes here. Bishop f5 to stop queen d3 or whatever. At least now both kings are open, right? Instead of just the white king. Nevertheless, I mean, I still prefer black, even here, even after a good move from white, even down a pawn, I still prefer black. Bishop c8 played, so that's the live position. Draw over there. Fabi and Prague have made time control with a check, a block. Oh, getting in. Ah! Stop checking me. Man, did you see, like, there was just no way to keep this queen away? Sneaks under, gets in. If king here, then it's going to be queen check and take the b pawn, breaking the whole queen side out and opening up this bishop as a target. So it comes here, gives the e pawn, takes here. He needs rook g2. And the question is, does white already have checkmate or not? Maybe black plays d5 in response, but then that blocks the bishop. So then you can just play rook f2. Rook check, here, right? What else would black do after rook f5 check? If you move the king forward, white takes your pawn with check. It feels like you're mated. I'd say feels, smells, looks, tastes like mate. The king comes back, it blocks the bishop as well, and white can do anything, including this. Can also try to press this kind of a position, which has some clear chances for white. Oh, man. Prague's in trouble? Yeah, Prague's in trouble. His king's been completely opened up. White's captured a bunch of his quote-unquote good pawns, equalizing the quote-unquote extra pawn that I felt like Prague had just off of structure before. So it's basically like white's won a pawn in this 7-move sequence leading up to time control, while further exposing the black king. The bishop's no longer on an anchored square defended by a pawn. Yeah, this looks amazing for Fabi. He's thinking. He's using a little bit more time. Esipenko, rook d8. Still no d4. Wow. Knight b3. Bishop c4. Knight a5. They just do the dance once every 2 moves. Okay, also, I have to ask one more question about d4 here. What if you simply took to take the pressure off e3 and to keep pushing? Like takes here, takes here, here. How good or bad is that? The threat is, you know, d2, here, e2. If the rook comes back, d2. Could try this. With the idea of here, here. But now if I keep putting my pawns on the color square that you can blockade, with the idea of doing this next, I'm still winning. You could cut off my rook's defense of this pawn, like so, but I go here. Sorry, I'll even trade first to make it simpler. Takes, takes, push. You got to stop that. Here, now I can't win with e2 because of the bishop. But now I just start pushing this one. Black wins again. Why not just play d4 here for Esipenko? He spent 3 minutes on this move here. It was move 38. I don't see anything wrong with d4. It looks just good, right? I mean, that's your thing. There is also rook c4 instead of queen c4. Yeah, noted. So now if I go here, maybe rook e4 is better than before. But I was thinking, you know, you'd want to simplify and trade off the queens. Black's queen's better placed than white's anyway. So let's just, I play a simple move like this. If you back up, I will play c4. So you're kind of stuck here trying to freeze this pawn. I just want to do this. It's hard for white to get any purchase or make any improvement on their position. I'm just going to play d3, d2 next. This move to try and stop it with this. Oh, hang on. Gotta be careful. White wins here, threatening queen e8 check with mates and stuff. I think white wins. White can try a check like here or here. At most, no, there's f4. It's losing. There's rook f4 check. Okay, so hang on. I'll be a little more careful here. Bishop f4. A fine move. Okay, that's a good move. There's no easy follow-up for black. Still, I believe that black is fine there somewhere. Here's where we are live. Okay, so nothing. I haven't missed anything really exciting. Fabi has not moved yet either. D4, knight c4, take, and rook takes. And if here, we're trying this. I mean, that's a pretty simple move. Just here, best white could do would be to maybe repeat. And if I want more, I have to calculate this, 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 and see if white can stop me. On queen d1, I have queen takes c4. Good night, Lauren. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean that seems to do it for black, right? Rook here. If here, 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 getting adventurous, there's check and win the bishop. Oh yeah, plenty of good games, Lauren. Although, a couple of them are done or past their most exciting phases, right? This game here between Esipenko and Wei Yi seems to have reached kind of a standoff between the knight and the two pawns, where they've done the following pattern many times. Knight b3, attacking c5, the dark square, which black can't defend the dark square too well, but they also don't want to concede the dark squares and get blockaded. So black plays like bishop c4, and then white plays knight a5, and then the bishop goes back. So we've had that several times by now in this game. But it was very exciting before, you know, when Esipenko was sacking the piece. It was this position here. Wei Yi's position looks kind of bad, but it's hard to figure out how Esipenko improves his position. He wants to put more pressure on these 2 points, but it's very hard to see how. So he tried this fancy move, knight c5, which I had also been looking at, but it doesn't seem to, like, it's not quite good enough to beat white, you know? It just makes white find some tough moves. The idea is to take here to then play bishop a6 and win the pawn on c4. So takes, check here, threatening queen h4, defends it, queen d4. And now there's a big threat of knight f2, hitting all white's pieces, so it forces white to finally take on e4, which white could do in all 3 ways, and it's complicated. But Wei Yi takes that way, then just saves his bishop. The pawn pushes, the knight runs. And yeah, now, you know, presumably black's going to get 2 pawns for the piece, but because of the way Wei played it, he's going to get his rook out coordinated around his king, and his king's very well defended by this set of pawns and the bishop. So we got this a few times, and that's where we're at in this game. Then we've got Caruana versus Prague. Wild game. Fabi's been thinking for a long time here, which I'm a little surprised by, because simply rook here looks very good for white. And I haven't thought of any other candidate moves, really. But this was a very, very exciting game here so far as well. It was like first a piece sack from white. Prague threw all this at him to trap the bishop while leaving the king here. Fabi gives the bishop, opens things up. Prague goes after the knight on c4. He's trying to distract the queen so he can go knight d6 and take. Or queen e6 first, and then knight d6. So we get this material. So then we get this weird material balance. Now, black's almost winning the game. Almost cleaning up right here. Just needs to play knight e8. And white is busted. Once you lose the g-pawn, rook in 2 pieces is too good. And, you know, Prague can hold his center together with these 2 pawns. But right here, Fabi plays a great move, d5. And if bishop d5, he's got rook f1. If pawn takes d5, then when he goes like h4, knight e8, there's rook e1 check that he can't deal with. And if e5, then he also can't play knight e8 because of queen e6 check. So finally he took it with the knight, but that means the pawn could get to h6 faster than he could play knight e8 from that one tempo. Actually, it's two tempo. Well, you waste one move with the pawn, and the knight needs 2 moves to get back. Yeah. So that one tempo, the knight e8's not in time. He can't stop this pawn. He has to sack the knight for the pawns. Initially, I thought this position looked pretty promising for black because of the nice pawn structure. And I came up with a cool plan of like bishop d5, rook c4 to cover both sides of the board with that rook. Prague found it too, but Fabi found a way to get juice even against this plan. He gave the c-pawn and broke in and found a way around with the queen and then picked up this pawn here. And now we can see, you know, he's traded a lot of pawns, including his g-pawn for a healthy pawn. So he's no longer sort of down a pawn in structure as I thought he was earlier. And he's finally played rook f5. I don't know why he spent 20 minutes on this move. But at least my one candidate move was one of his candidate moves. So, and, you know, it feels like basically the idea is, you know, block this and then you could maybe defend g2, right, and keep playing. It seems like only the chances are with white to mate the black king. Black has no chances to be better anymore because the bishop's not anchored by a pawn. There's not enough of a structure anywhere to hide the king from perpetuals. Barely anything to hide it from mate. So it's kind of a 2-result position now, I would say, in Fabi's. Yeah, I thought I found a great plan, you know, and then Prague played it, which also made me feel like, you know, like it was at least reasonable to find it. But Fabi found tactical juice. It's not obvious that white is going to have tactical juice here because black does have things pretty well defended. At the same time, I did say there's possibly something for white because I can see that, you know, the black king's a little bit open, but finding the route in is not obvious, you know. Rook d1, this may have been one of the most important moves of the game. I don't know why that's the move here, but somehow that was the right setup for what followed, you know. So, yeah, it's not like a surprise that white had some way to make some kind of threats. Black didn't have like rock solid, everything's locked in, I'm safe, you know, but there it is. He found something nice. Queen c4, rook f7, and push that, or is trading rooks again the best winning chances? For white, I mean, the ideal scenario would be to just go for checkmate, right? And if black doesn't play d5, right? If they do something like this, I mean, I just assume there's some way to checkmate here. You know, like a king in the middle like this. I don't know if I've got the best technique to do it, but yeah, I mean, eventually it's just mate, right? So that's the ideal for white, is to give checkmate, I think. Prague goes king c6. Okay, so he's desperately still trying to cover dark squares with pawns and light square with bishop. Now this blocks the bishop. So a simple move for Fabi that's possible here is rook f2. He's just played it. It's just that one tempo allows him to defend here, and now he's threatening to go rook c2, push the king somewhere, and again, you know, play for checkmate. Whoa, not queen b3, but you know what I mean. I think that if we got a scenario like here, if black's able to take on g2, the game will probably be a draw. So white, even with this, they don't want to trade the rook. They want to give checkmate somehow. I mean, that's normal. Every chess player wants to give checkmate, but this is a position where basically, I think the scenario where white wins is a checkmate, not a rook trade. I'll say that. If you imagine white getting d6 and a rook getting traded on g2, I mean, I think it's a very, very basic fortress. Honestly, I don't even know if white could win without the bishop. If black just played rook g5, c5, you know? So certainly, like, trading pawns and rooks is not heading towards winning chances for white. White's traded the perfect number of pawns to open the king, and now wants to try and get a checkmate. King c7, reopening this. So, like, I think rook f7 is drawish, right? It gets played. So I think that's drawish. What was happening on rook c2? I guess he was going here. It's very hard to stop rook g2, right? I mean, you have to operate like with 100% checks. It's not easy. So rook f7. So now, okay, maybe this would be safe. Oh, he's even agreed to a draw. Look at that, folks. Like, it's just so clear and obvious to them, yeah. So I'm sorry, the excitement's not really there anymore, but basically some scenario like this is very plausible at this point. Right? That's nothing there. So rook f7 and a fair draw is agreed. Well played by Fabi and Prague today. I mean, they're playing great chess. It's funny, like Fabi's on an even score, Prague's on -2, and they're playing phenomenal chess. The term is just very tight, and basically Sindarov has all the wins. Oh, and then Giri won 2 really nice games against these two guys where he just overplayed them. There were 2 games in a row, right, where Giri, he just crushed these 2 guys. And yeah, for like 3 days, Giri was playing like 2,900, 3,000 briefly. Technically, Patrick, Sindarov clinched today. Any more moves from Wei Yi? Not yet. Let's switch back to Zhu, who's in a very, very precarious situation here. Tied in first place with Vaishali, in danger of losing this game, but also she has chances of winning this game, Which will it be? Sets up some c5 thing. Bishop e6 to counter it. King comes up. Hello from the A pawn. Just creeps closer. So big deal for Zhu. Not only is she tied with Vaishali, but there's like 5 women within 1.5 points of them. Okay, after today, finally some people will be out of contention because there will only be 1 game left. But at the start of today, I think 7 out of 8 players on the women's side were in contention for a tie for first place. Can you believe that? 7 out of 8 of them started today with a chance to be the candidate still. So every half point is just of incredible value at this stage of the tournament for them. And, for qualifying, which is the main thing, and also, for finishing first, 4th, or 7th. Okay, so now Bibi Sara won again today. She's peaking at the right time. She's tied for first with Vaishali. Zhu, if she draws, she'll be tied for first with them. If she wins, she'll be in sole first. If she loses, she'll be half a point behind. So Zhu chooses to put the pawn on g6 instead of trading. A very, very hard choice to make. They were past time control here. She spent 20 minutes on g5. Wow, she dug deep for that. And then it's not really clear if you want to play this g6 thing or if you want to just trade. Trading opens the king. g6 is kind of like a thorn in the king's side. It creates certain patterns. Is she maybe threatening something like knight c6 here? I don't know. Looks like knight c6. Black could play queen c4. Queen a3 maybe. Yeah, who knows? It's messy. The position's probably very, very close to equal. But super 3 resulty. Very, very hard to play. And they're headed straight back into time pressure after making time control just a few moves ago. We should have covered this one more, VJ. I mean, I've covered everything I could, pretty much. I was, for my health, I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. anymore. So I'm joining the broadcast after the kids go to school. And on the days that I've broadcast, I've covered both tournaments. So. Afterwards, I mean, if you want if you think Jesse should have covered the women's more when Jesse was broadcasting, that's just not his interest. So there's... I mean, you can certainly have your opinion. You can voice your opinion, but you're not going to convince Jesse to cover the women's candidates tournament. Patrick thinks White's dominating. Well, White would love to be dominating. But here's the deal. White's king is fairly open, and White has to keep this pawn from queening. That's a lot of stuff to do. And outposting a knight on c6, I don't see why that would be dominating. There's nothing over on c6. You need to get at the king. And if you go knight c6, knight e7, king h8, there's no follow-up in general. So, yeah, and Opfashach says you can't be dominating with such a king. There's always shots for black. Always shots. And if you add that White's defending this pawn, I would say it's like White who's very, very risky side of equality. The position's probably balanced in some computery way, but the right moves for White are harder to find than the right moves for black, in my own personal opinion. There's definitely things that can be done. I mean, she could play c5 to block this and try and get rid of that pawn, yeah. But black's coming in here, right? Going after this, and then here, and here, and here, and... oops. Wait, you were teasing me, Sweet Blues. You were hanging the queen the whole time. It's very weird. White's got tons of space, but tons of space means the king's got nowhere to go, so... White is up a pawn for sure, yeah. Okay, so c5's not a candidate move. I mean, I think rook e4 is a candidate move. Maybe stopping queen h4. King g3, queen g5, not so much. So, I don't know, rook e4. Thinking quite a while. Rook e4 doesn't look too bad. I don't see any like really strong move for black in response. And I also don't see any other moves for White. Okay, she plays it. So, bishop f5 is a candidate move, but it allows c5 check, which looks good for White. So maybe queen g5 would be my move, and then if they take here, we go here. And now the rook's fourth rank is all covered. And if the rook moves away, then... Okay, that's the wrong square. Let's go rook e2 instead. Now, I could go queen h4, king e3. I'm still down 2 pawns, or I could just take 1 pawn back right here and go heavy pieces like this. This is an easier position to evaluate. It's just heavy pieces, down a pawn with the king completely open. White's got no threatening past pawn. It's obvious that black's okay here. And again, it's like White who's on the terrified side of probably it's equal. You know, like probably there's some move like queen e7 that holds it together. Trying to trade queens. We just have to avoid that queen trade somehow. I'm threatening queen f3. Queen f5, there would have been still queen e6 drawing. Queen g4 is even worse. There's queen f8. Queen h5 looks good enough. Etc. Something like that. Feels like the direction of this game. Draw a greed over there and over here. Wei Yi keeps the game going. Yet again. Does not take the drawage. Stops playing knight a5. Now if you take, you can't play d4 anymore. Wow, he spent 18 minutes on this move. So Wei Yi is back in time trouble on move 42. It took him 2 moves to get into time trouble. 2 moves. I mean, it's not desperate. 8 minutes plus a 30-second increment, but, you know, he's low. Now, how's Black intending to defend that pawn on e3? Because if they just drop the pawn, then this move was an easy win. That pawn might have to go to e2. I'm not really seeing anything else. And that would start to give White the blockade. That would start to give White the blockade. One of the reasons the time usage is the way you observe it to be here, Sweet Blues, is that the pressure is so high when the opponents are so good. You know, like, you know that if you miss like the tiniest little thing that they can make big use of it. You know that if you get into like a bad position, you feel like you'll never get a second chance, you know, so you just feel like this huge weight and pressure on everything you do. Esipenko in the tank. Goryachkina as well. Goes back to b4. So she maybe re-threatens queen b4, queen b2 check as an idea. White does not play rook e2. Holy moly. White walks right into queen b2. Is White going to play rook e2 in response without trading? Then Black could trade on a2, take on c4, take on a3, take on b5. And it gets pretty technical. Close to equal, but Black does need to get rid of the g-pawn or the back rank mate's going to be annoying in the endgame. Queen's attacked, bishop's attacked. Not a million choices for Black, but there is still, you know, a bailout. That's why she's not just blitzing out queen b2 because she has to. There is still this move. Threatening here and threatening here. The game maybe still just carries on. Not really threatening bishop f5 because knight check, knight takes f5, and then back rank. c5 as well. Bishop f5, c5 also a problem. So basically king g2. Trying to play bishop f5 maybe. Bishop h3, says Kalen. Okay, that could be cool. Bishop h3. We want to go queen g6. Here. Check. Coming into g3 is serious. That's Mateovich. Matanovic. Matanovic. Wow, bishop h3 is killer there. So this is definitely a concept. Queen d6 here. King g2 check. Holy goly. And presumably king here, you could play something simple like rook f3 or queen g3, and you're just kind of in. I mean, this. This kind of position's pretty chill for Black. But if you want to checkmate, maybe instead of queen g3, just take the pawn and just believe in yourself. You know, just believe in yourself. Well, that's the thing, Kalen. In that position, no, I think in his queen d6 position after king g2 check. What do you do other than take it? You know, you back off somewhere else. Black gets this pawn, right? And the king's very open. Come back this way. Queen h2 is what black wanted. King g1, this will be check. I have to be careful not to take this at the wrong time and lose to knight e7, right? But rook f3... Oh, that gives time for maybe some kind of c5 trick at some point. Yeah, okay, so maybe king h1. Wow, that would be intense. Let's see what she's chosen. She's made a move. She went back to d6. So we might see king g2, bishop h3, king h1 even. Yeah, it's possible. After king h1... For what it's worth, Patrick, I'm guessing her knight c6 move is not the best. Rook e5 gets played, and king just moves out of the way. From this position, what black wants to do next is move the bishop. The king gets out of the way of the c5 check trick, and now the idea for black is to move the bishop. Couple options. One option is g4. And the other option is d7. Those immediately come to mind. The idea is you want to play queen g6, and then you couple it with some other kind of threat. So bishop g4, the second threat is f3. And bishop d7, the second threat is to trade and take d4. So either of these moves would be a double threat next. White needs a fairly good move. Very, very hard to hold this together for white. Low on time. I don't like the knight c6 move. Oh, I like white's position less and less since the knight went from e5 to c6. Yeah. Looking very risky. That's one piece just further away from the king, who needs so much cover and babysitting. Here he comes. Up to do his own. He's on the run. He's on the run. Thank you for the raid, Papasionates. And welcome in. We're watching the FIDE Candidates Tournament to determine the challengers for the FIDE World Chess Champion and FIDE Women's World Chess Champions. And this game here, Zhu Jin'er, she's the second highest rated active woman in the world right now, maybe. But she's been tied for first place in this tournament going into the second to last round here. There are two people who are now half a point ahead of her, pending her result. If she wins, she'll be in sole first. If she draws, she'll be in shared first. But her position's very, very risky here against Goryachkina. Bishop d7's the choice, so the threat is here and here. Mostly here. And in the other candidates tournament, the sort of open one, the gender-wise open or whatever, overall world champion candidates tournament, today Sindarov, who's been ahead by miles the whole time, today he technically clinched first place mathematically with a draw against Giri, who will finish in second place. Giri will end this tournament in second place eventually. In the Open Championship division, it'll be Sindarov and then Giri, and then there's still a fight for third place. I think Fabi is going to be one of the people in contention for third place on an even score. If Wei Yi wins here, he'll definitely be in contention as well, but we don't know if he will. Andre thinking for a long time. Blue-Baum and Naka are probably each half a point behind Fabi after drawing their game today. Got a rook d5 suggestion. Yeah, I think rook d5, black can take this pawn because you don't have rook d7 check. But, I mean, you could maybe take here, right? And just keep going. Rook check. Oh, hard to pick a square for the king. Maybe here. Take. Is slightly better for black, but maybe not huge. Wish I had even better to suggest. Here. That's an extra pawn for black, maybe? Some possibilities. Yeah, I would say most players would struggle to play white's position without getting into desperate time trouble here. Very, very hard to play from Jew's side. If knight e7, that defends the G pawn. Knight e7, rook e8, c5. Knight e7, rook e8, c5, queen f6, queen f7. Okay, here's an idea. Knight e7 holding that pawn. Rook e8 trying to break things up. c5 here and queen here. Oh, but black still got this pawn. Breaks white with the pawn. Breaks white with the pawn. Wait a minute. Takes here. Check. That's mate. Did I decoy too soon? Queen just takes it. Okay, I should be able to calculate a back rank mate, so let me just double check this thing. We've got a move from Jew just now. She played rook back to e4, so she didn't go for knight e7. That's crazy. I can't. Okay, well then that's not my move. I'm not going to sack it then. Maybe just take a pawn and play the endgame. I don't know. Okay, in any case, we get a different move. Bishop d7, we get rook e4. I think knight e7 looked really logical, but the knight coming back to e5 would be good as well. Undo the damage from this knight c6 move, which I really think was a lemon. Maybe it should have come back immediately right here. Rook e5. Now you're just undoing all the bad things that we've done. But yeah, I mean, these pawns are dropping if black wants them. White's going to play queen a3 with a tempo on the rook if black takes either pawn. And the king's back rank mated, so you can't really go on adventures like rook here and stuff. Ooh, I don't know about taking that knight now that I think about that. Wouldn't bishop f5 have been good now? Getting rid of the pawn? That seems clear. Bishop f... What? What's going on? Bishop f5? What is she going to do? c5? You can go here. That stops queen f7. Bishop f5. Why not bishop f5? Why not bishop f5? That's almost incomprehensible. You would snap bishop takes c6, Kaylin? Okay. Do you, Kaylin, see anything like terrible about bishop f5? I really want to get rid of this thorn in my king. Then I can just attack the white king with everything I've got instead of watching out for the back rank mates. We get a trade. The Queen seeks mate. Oh. That's not easy. Queen f2. This guy's close, right? If you trade and push, there's rook e1. But queen g6 is really simple here. Oh, black's like winning. Oh, Jew. Ah, she's blown it. She's definitely blown it. It's 2 result against her now. 2 result against her, and the odds of saving it are honestly quite slim, I will say. In my opinion, the odds are quite slim of saving this as white after queen g6. Also, it might be dead lost, in which case that's part of why the odds of saving it are low. Like, you're either worse with very slim chances of saving it, or you're already lost. I guess white will play d5. Just what can they do? Defend the c-pawn. At least white can start playing quickly at some point there. Just say, I've got nothing left to play for, so I'll just play some moves. Ay. But, I mean, the other thing black can do is they can be calculating if queen g5 is a forced win. Basically, the idea is this. Now, I mean, you can only use the a-pawn as a decoy once, and you've still got back rank mate against you, so you better not miss here with this line, right? But the idea is to win the queen, but, you know, this is what I mean about you better not miss. It has to be all with check. Yeah. I think you should take on g6. She's taking on g6. Yeah. The g6 pawn was fairly important in this position, Patrick. Yeah. So, Kalen is saying this is easy now. Opfashach has lost games like this before with white, where you grab a lot of space, but then it starts to drop pawn by pawn. So Kalen's saying rook a8 is going to make it easy. Honestly, I would just like threaten f3 and then push a2, a1 while the white queen's defending the king. That would be my dream. Of course, if allowed, I will just take this pawn. That's very easy. It opens more angles to the king. So I'm expecting d5, and d5 gets played. So now basically a move like queen f6 to me looks good. Basically, you're looking at these angles and f3. Yeah, queen f6 looks like a hell of a drug, we'll say, for Jesse. It's not here. Rook c3. e2 was forced. Oh my god, he spent 20 minutes on e2 as well. Knight c1. Gunning for your pawn. Oh, man. Esipenko's in danger. He's in danger of having his own pawn wrapped up as a gift against him. He got everything he has just sort of like frozen and tangled here. I have no idea why the rook moved off of the e-file a couple moves ago. That was so weird. And I don't know. This was the move where he played rook d8 right here. And to me, d4, knight c4, even just trading, it was just simple that his pawns are enough for the piece. Very, very simple. I have no idea what this highfalutin move was about. But then his pawn got forced in front of this one, frozen on light squares. And, okay, he tries to unfreeze this. He needs d4, d3. So there's this possibility. And then if knight e2, what does he want to do? The rook's defended, so this is not... Oh, he's just lost. I mean, white can just take and take, more or less. And he's going to... I think he's just going to throw this d-pawn at white. But, I mean, come on. There's opposite-colored bishops to blockade with, and it's a knight. Oh, he's going down. It's too bad. He started the game brilliantly. And now it looks like he'll go down. Oh, man, we got a resignation already from Jew, and it was queen f6, like I suggested. Queen e2, and just a2. That's... See how easy that was, Kaylin? You just go after f3 and then start running this pawn. Ugh. Here, I don't even know if the next move is queen f3, king d4. It might be queen c3 to push the king a little bit more in this direction, right? And then you can take their rook or checkmate them or whatever you want to do. So this queen f6, this is a nice move, but not hard to find. I mean, I would play it in a bullet game. I don't play bullet, but I would definitely play it in a 3-minute game, which I do sometimes play. Very simple. You just find some more angles on the king, plus tie the queen to here, and just whatever. Easy win for black there. So that puts Ju in a bad position and gives Goryachkina an outside chance of catching up next round because she's only 1 point behind the leaders, but Ju is now half a point behind the leaders. It's also going to depend on the last round pairings. So let's have a look. Yes, Marzipan. Sindarov, he drew today, but he won the tournament. So let's have a look at what the pairings are for tomorrow in the women's section. So one of the leaders is Asaubayeva. She's started off the tournament pretty badly, but she has now won 3 out of 4 games, so she's on the rise, and she's playing Divya, who's plummeted from a good start to last place with 1/2 out of her last 5 games. Oh, God, that's who you want to play in the last round at this point. Divya just wants the tournament to be over. Bibisara wants to win the World Championships. Vaishali's got the advantage of white, but a tougher opponent, Lano. If Lano beats her, she could catch up in first place. Goryachkina, if she wins against Tan, she could catch up to first place. Muzachuk, if she wins, she could catch up to first place. Ju, if she draws. I think 1 million people are still in the running, even with 1 round to go. So, Vaishali and Bibisara are in first place. Either of them could win the tournament. Ju could win the tournament if she wins, and Vaishali and Bibisara draw or lose. Lano, if she beats Vaishali and Bibisara loses, and Ju draws, then Lano will be in a tie for first place. Goryachkina, if she wins, could also tie with Lano and or Ju. Muzachuk, if she wins and Vaishali and Bibisara lose. Yeah, there's still 6 players in the running. There's 6 players in the running with 1 round left. Truly, seriously, the only ones who can't win the tournament are Tan and Divya. So, yeah. Now, I would say the best chances are, of course, with the players who are tied for first. Vaishali with white and Bibisara with black against a player who's just fallen apart. Divya here. I say that sadly, not viciously, but she has completely fallen apart. Let's see what her game today was like. Normal, normal, normal. Interesting. White just pushed the pawn to d5 and gained some space in the center. And it's very hard to fight back against this passed pawn in the center. Oh. And now it's just, you're just trapped. Evil. Oh, so evil. Queen takes rook e8 check trick. Oh, again. Brutal. But, I mean, Lano played a great game. She played a plan that was new to Divya and just killed her. Damn. So, yeah, so that's going to be pretty tense tomorrow. I'll be here to watch it with you, Patrick. Not at 5 a.m., but, at like 8:30, we'll be able to see the time scramble and so forth. And if we go and check the standings on the open side, I guess Esipenko's still playing. So the standings are not set yet. Here's my board. So white doesn't take the queen trade, just comes back Wow, cuts off the black pieces and collects the pawn. Huh? Oh, wow, rook e2, queen e2, queen c3, queen e6, and you get this with check, and then you mate the king. Oh, brutal. Brutal. Let's say for argument's sake that Wei wins. Just for argument's sake. Then he'd have 6.5 out of 13. Let me just check the standings. So it'll be 9.5, 7.5, 6.5, and then 6.5, and then 6-6. So there's going to be like a 4-way fight for third place. Esipenko probably finished last. Mildly disappointing tournament for Prague. Solid tournament for Bluebaum. Wei Yi's really going to be saved from a crummy tournament just by Esipenko going 0-2 against him. But I would say Wei Yi's tournament's been pretty meager. I mean, he's playing a great game here against Esipenko today, a defensive game where Esipenko was the one who initiated the brilliance, and he's played very good defense, but Esipenko could have drawn this game a million times, I think, and now he resigns. Okay, so yeah, Esipenko kind of self-destructs on this one. I gotta understand, like, how good or bad was his position at this point? Was he already busted? Bishop a6, queen a4, the only move, brilliant. And if I go d4, what's wrong? Knight c4 takes. Yeah, I couldn't find anything for white there. Rook takes. Yeah, all fine. Apparently, though, white has the move knight b3. And then I guess on d3, knight c5. Oh, I never saw this tactic coming. Here. Look at that. I mean, I knew the queen was attacking the rook. I saw some tactics on this pattern, but that I did not know that I could give every single piece like this and then clean up with just, yeah. I didn't see that pattern of rook takes e3. The Giri game, I mean, Giri played great, right? Giri played way good that game. Although, I guess Fabi didn't play his best game that game, it's fair to say. Okay, so the computer says white was better this whole time. So Wei Yi was just repeating a bunch of times to make time control. This was a key moment. We looked at d4. It was the correct move. And then we had knight c5 would be the move. And then queen f5, king h2, rook c5, queen d4 draw. That was the last time he had a clear and obvious draw. And we of course looked at that. But he wanted more. He played bishop c4. But we said, what could he ever do against knight a5? And the answer was nothing. So, and after that, he was in trouble. So, yeah. So basically, this knight c5 is just not that good. You know, it's brilliant, it's beautiful, but it's slightly bad. So, there you go. And then he had a chance to hold on with it, but didn't find it. Kind of a self-destruction game. Unfortunately for him, kind of saving Wei Yi's tournament. I don't think that if we look at the standings, I don't think that Wei Yi has played better than Naka or Bluebaum or even Prague. Esipenko's just played much looser against him than against anyone else for whatever reason. So yeah, there we are. One more game to go. Maybe not a ton to fight for in the last round, so we'll see what the players do. But I mean, today's games were like hard fighting games. I mean, this Prague and Fabi game was like great, so there's still some players with some ambition. Maybe we'll still have some good games tomorrow over there. But for now, I will wish you all a good rest of the day and go record a podcast with Jesse and Kostya. If you like free dojo content, such as the Dojo Talks podcast or live coverage of this kind of tournament, then what you need to do is support Chess Dojo on Patreon. It's $2 a month, and that's what supports the free content and tells Kostya and Jesse to do this kind of show, So please, if you do value it, $2 a month is pretty doable, and that's just what we want to see is a couple hundred people voting in a small way like that this is the content we should keep doing. All right, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the denouement of the women's candidates, which is going to be crazy cool. They'll have a crazy cool last round, so we can look forward to these matchups tomorrow. Heartbreak for Jin today. She's going to have a hard time picking herself up with black tomorrow, and pretty much a must-win situation. She could make it with a draw, but she would need miracle results from Divya and Lano, so I think she's pretty much got to win to even give herself a good chance. And honestly, I think even Vaishali and Bibisara are going to be pushing to win. I don't think you're going to see Bibisara or Vaishali try to make a quick draw and then hope that everything lands right for them. I think you'll probably see at least one of them win the tournament, one of the two leaders, but who knows? We'll see. Sometimes, both leaders push and then they both lose, right? Like the famous Carlsen and Kramnik candidates events. So maybe Bibisara and Vaishali will both lose, and it'll be like an absolute mayhem and a 3 or 4-way tie for first place tomorrow. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great day, and be good to everyone else around.